Among the array of distinguished Roman emperors, some names shine brighter than others, yet history sometimes unfairly forgets those who ruled wisely and peacefully. Antoninus Pius is one such ruler, whose period on the throne, though marked by unprecedented stability and prosperity, is now almost erased from collective memory, and the emperor himself is often unjustly relegated to the role of merely a temporary and insignificant ruler. And yet, rare was the sovereign who received such sincere and lavish praise for his impeccable moral character, which earned him the honorary epithet, pious. There is an ancient wisdom that states, "Happy is the nation whose history is not filled with dramatic upheavals, and blessed are the years whose records remain obscure to descendants." Perhaps it was precisely this serenity of Antoninus's reign that led historians describing his era to often not exert sufficient effort for a strict chronological ordering of events. However, thanks to meticulous analysis of preserved coins and ancient inscriptions, which serve as reliable confirmation for scarce written sources, modern researchers have managed to reconstruct the most probable sequence of key moments of his reign, offering us a unique opportunity to look into this amazing, yet little-studied era. The future emperor's life began on September 19, 86 CE, in Lanuvium, a picturesque town located south of majestic Rome. Despite his birthplace, his family's roots were deeply embedded in the soil of southern Gaul, in the city of Nemosis, now known as Nîmes. This noble family, branched into many influential lines, had for centuries held some of the highest and most responsible positions in the vast Roman Empire, playing a key role in its political and social life. Antoninus Pius's grandfather was the first family member to firmly establish himself in public service directly in Rome, paving the way for his family's further advancement. His political career was highly successful. He was honored with the consulship twice. In the tumultuous year 69, he displayed foresight and loyalty by supporting Vespasian in his struggle for the imperial throne, for which he was later amply rewarded with a suffect consulship. Then, under Emperor Domitian, in 85 CE, he again held the position of ordinary consul, which attested to his enduring influence and authority within the empire's highest circles. His childhood years were spent in the modest settlement of Laurium, situated in close proximity to majestic Rome. This place, it appears, left a deep impression on his soul, becoming his true home and a source of attachment. It is not surprising that in later years, already at the helm of the empire, he decided to erect a magnificent palace there, emphasizing the special significance of this corner for himself. Antoninus's family history was shadowed by an early loss. His father passed away at a relatively young age, shortly after holding the honorable position of consul in 89 CE. The burden of his upbringing fell upon his two grandfathers who, it appears, meticulously adhered to the strictest and most traditional canons, tirelessly striving to instill in young Antoninus a spirit of piety, modesty, and genuine simplicity. In 101 CE, Antoninus reached adulthood, marking the beginning of his journey through the traditional senatorial cursus honorum, the sequence of public offices obligatory for members of the nobility. Nevertheless, surprisingly, written sources remain silent about his early career steps until 120 CE, when he finally attained one of the highest echelons of power, becoming consul. By this time, he had already tied the knot with Aeneia Galeria Faustina, who later became widely known as Faustina the Elder. Faustina belonged to a family with an impeccable reputation, and notably, her family's roots, like Antoninus's own, originated in a provincial background. However, similar to his own lineage, his wife's family had been firmly established in Italy for many generations, with its distinguished members achieving significant and high official positions within the state hierarchy. Their union produced 4 children, 2 daughters and 2 sons. Unfortunately, the harsh realities of the time claimed the lives of 3 of them before Antoninus assumed the burden of imperial power. Only Faustina the younger outlived her siblings, and it was she who was destined to become the wife of Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Roman emperors, in the future. Upon completing his consular term, Antoninus decided to retire to his country estate, seeking solitude and a peaceful existence. However, his tranquility proved fleeting, as his retirement did not last long. Soon after, when Emperor Hadrian administratively divided Italy into 4 extensive districts, Antoninus, as one of the distinguished former consuls, was honored with the charge of governing one of these newly formed provinces. Specifically, the district encompassing the lands of Etruria and Umbria was placed under his supervision. The exact duration of his tenure in this post remains unclear to historians, but it is presumed that he may have held this responsible position for several years. Between 133 and 136 CE, Antoninus held the position of proconsul of the province of Asia. This proconsulship was rightly considered one of the most prestigious and respected among all provincial administrative positions in the empire. As governor, Antoninus demonstrated not only firmness in administration but also outstanding abilities for decisive leadership. Every matter was handled by him with utmost seriousness, and his primary attention was focused on ensuring and enhancing the material prosperity of the province under his charge. Upon his return to Rome in 136 CE, he was admitted into Emperor Hadrian's inner circle, becoming a member of his private council, a key body through which the practical aspects of the entire empire's life were managed. Within this influential advisory body, Antoninus quickly earned a reputation as a proponent of moderate and gentle approaches to state affairs. The renowned Marcus Aurelius, who later became emperor, subsequently repeatedly mentioned Antoninus's modesty and simple tastes, emphasizing their unchanging nature both before and after his ascension to the imperial throne. He also highlighted in Antoninus's character qualities such as sobriety of mind, absolute truthfulness, and innate restraint, traits that, in Marcus Aurelius's opinion, were the true embodiment of the best virtues of early Roman Republic citizens. Antoninus, having completed his cursus honorum, the traditional path of honors, had by that point already become one of the most influential and respected figures in the Roman state, thanks to his undeniable moral integrity, innate nobility of character, and impeccable fulfillment of all his state duties. Emperor Hadrian lacked a direct heir among his closest blood relatives, which prompted him to adopt Caionius Commodus, declaring him his official successor and future emperor. However, Caionius died prematurely before Hadrian himself in the ill-fated year 138 CE. Consequently, Hadrian found himself in urgent need of a person enjoying widespread popular support and possessing significant experience in state governance, capable of immediately assuming the reins of imperial power. Quite predictably, Hadrian's gaze turned to Antoninus, who fully met both of these critically important requirements. When Hadrian extended to Antoninus the offer of adoption and subsequent ascension to the imperial throne of Rome, the latter spent some time in deep contemplation, recognizing the colossal significance and responsibility of the proposition. After thorough and comprehensive deliberation, Antoninus agreed to accept this high honor, and the adoption procedure was officially completed on February 25, 138 CE. Nevertheless, the adoption proposed by Hadrian contained one, yet very significant, precondition. Antoninus was obliged, in turn, to adopt Marcus Annius Verus, Hadrian's own nephew, as well as Lucius, the son of the late Caionius Commodus. It was these two who subsequently ascended to the imperial throne, becoming known as Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus, respectively. It is presumed that Hadrian harbored the hope that Antoninus would serve as a temporary ruler, only for a period sufficient for Marcus and Lucius to reach maturity and be able to govern the empire independently. Fragments of the speech Hadrian delivered to the Senate, introducing Antoninus as his successor, have been preserved in the annals of history. His words were as follows: "Fate has taken Caionius from us, but I have found you an emperor, noble, gentle, obedient, intelligent, neither headstrong and rash due to youth, nor negligent due to old age." Following his adoption, Antoninus was immediately granted key powers inherent in imperial authority, proconsular imperium and tribunician power. Thus, although he did not yet formally bear the title of emperor, he was already effectively sharing the burden of governing the empire, as Hadrian suffered from a debilitating illness that rendered him irrational and even prone to suicide. A widely known English proverb states, "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." However, this assertion proved untenable concerning Antoninus. On the contrary, it seemed that with each new level of authority and increasing responsibility, his sense of honor and duty only strengthened and deepened. Later, Marcus Aurelius, his adopted son, would speak of his mentor with deep respect, pointing to him as the brightest example of how a sovereign can preserve and even strengthen his inner core amidst unlimited power. be firm, as he was, with an even temper, pious, cheerful, kind, despising empty glory, cautious, precise, diligent, and meticulous. Do not rush and do not delay, and let your tastes be simple. For months after his adoption, specifically on July 10, 138 CE, Hadrian passed away, and Antoninus was officially proclaimed the new emperor of Rome. Hadrian had acquired many adversaries in the Senate during his lifetime, partly due to his continuous travels and clear preference for provincial matters over the interests of the imperial city itself. Another cause of discontent was the division of Italy, which effectively significantly curtailed the Senate's influence and powers. Furthermore, his unpredictable and at times irrational behavior in the final months of his life only exacerbated his isolation and alienated potential supporters. However, Antoninus considered it his sacred duty to restore the good name and legacy of his adoptive father. He immediately took steps toward reconciliation with the Senate. A significant portion of Hadrian's decrees were annulled, and senators previously condemned by Hadrian's verdicts received pardon. The administrative division of Italy was abolished, and it reverted to its former structure, which had existed since the time of Emperor Augustus. Nevertheless, the task of deifying Hadrian proved to be quite challenging. Antoninus persistently implored the senators and even threatened to abdicate if they did not give their consent. Ultimately, the Senate conceded, partly out of deep respect for Antoninus's character, and partly out of fear of the legion's reaction, among whom Hadrian enjoyed undeniable popularity. From then on, Antoninus adopted it as an unshakable rule to constantly consult with the Senate and accommodate its wishes to the greatest extent possible. It was precisely due to such peaceful and pious rule that he earned the epithet, Pius. Thus, he entered history as Antoninus Pius. The beginning of Antoninus Pius's reign was marked by a highly favorable period. Members of the senatorial order felt deep satisfaction that one of their own had ascended to the imperial throne. For a long time, he had been a full member of this influential assembly, sharing their way of life and interests, while demonstrating no ambition for higher posts. Thus, he was able to fully empathize with their hopes and claims, showing a willingness to grant them not just formal, but genuine power. At the same time, the provinces of the empire, quite naturally, showed favor towards the person chosen by Hadrian himself. Emperor Hadrian, undoubtedly, enjoyed immense popularity among the inhabitants of the provinces, as during his reign he undertook numerous journeys, visiting practically all corners of the vast empire. Emperor Antoninus Pius held the consular office in 139 and 140 CE. In the latter year, he performed these duties jointly with his adopted son, Marcus Aurelius, who was 19 years old at the time. Approximately during the same period, Marcus Aurelius was betrothed to Faustina the Younger, Antoninus's own daughter. Around 140 CE, certain disturbances arose in Britain. However, regrettably, the written sources at our disposal do not provide detailed information about these events. Despite this, the ancient Greek geographer and traveler Pausanias asserts in his works that the Brigantes tribe, residing in Britain, invaded Roman territory, leading to the loss of a significant portion of their ancestral lands. The Brigantes tribe lived north of Hadrian's Wall, and in response to the situation, Roman authorities erected a new turf defensive structure, the Antonine Wall, whose construction was carried out approximately between 140 and 145 CE. Concurrently with these events, clashes unfolded on the empire's borders with Germanic tribes inhabiting the Rhine coast. The details of this border conflict remain unclear to historians, but it appears the local governor successfully managed the challenge using only the military contingent stationed in that province. In the third year of his reign, Emperor Antoninus Pius suffered a profound personal sorrow. His wife, Faustina, passed away. Deeply shaken by this loss, Antoninus undertook a series of significant steps to immortalize his late wife's memory. At his initiative, the Senate recognized Faustina as divine, and in her honor, a magnificent honorary column was erected, whose base, fortunately, has survived to this day. On the preserved pedestal of this column, a relief is clearly visible, depicting Faustina being carried to the heavens by a winged figure, symbolizing her apotheosis, her deification. Furthermore, solemn games were regularly held in her honor, and a special temple was built for her cult, becoming a place of worship. In 147 CE, a joyous event occurred in Marcus Aurelius's family, the birth of his first child, a daughter. To commemorate this event, Antoninus Pius bestowed exceptional honors upon Marcus Aurelius, granting him tribunician power and proconsular imperium outside the city of Rome. These powers effectively affirmed his status as co-emperor, providing him with broad governmental prerogatives. However, it is worth noting that he received the full title of Augustus only much later, in 161 CE. Notably, at the same time, Marcus's wife and Antoninus's own daughter, bearing the same name, Faustina, was honored with the title of Augusta. The year 147 CE held special significance, as it marked the 900th anniversary of the city's founding, and Emperor Antoninus Pius ensured that this momentous occasion was celebrated with all due splendor and magnificence. In the following year, 148, Antoninus celebrated another important date, his 10th anniversary on the imperial throne. In honor of this jubilee, grand games were organized in the capital. Coins minted in subsequent years depict elephants and lions, convincingly indicating that these exotic animals were a notable part of those magnificent spectacles. These first 10 years of Antoninus's reign were generally characterized by a period of quiet prosperity and relative peace throughout the vast empire, despite some localized difficulties in regions such as Britain and Germany. However, this period of relative tranquility was abruptly interrupted in 152 CE when a powerful earthquake devastated western Anatolia. Large urban centers such as Smyrna, Ephesus, and further north, Cyzicus and Bithynia, were reduced to ruins, fundamentally altering the very topography of the landscape. In response to this widespread destruction, Marcus Aurelius was entrusted with the crucial task of overseeing extensive reconstruction efforts. The presence of several new buildings dating from this period serves as tangible evidence of their role in this monumental restoration project. It is worth noting that a separate seismic event had already inflicted significant damage to the region's infrastructure, particularly its roads, just a few years earlier. The province of Mauritania, with its sparse population and rugged mountainous landscape, had always been a territory where order was difficult to maintain. By 152 CE, the situation there had become truly unbearable. Communication routes were no longer safe, and the mighty Atlas Mountains served as a virtually impregnable refuge for numerous bandits. In response to this, a large-scale military undertaking was planned, aimed at subduing both the bandits and the warlike nomadic tribes inhabiting the region. Roman legions successfully pushed the Mauritanian tribes westward, toward the Atlantic coast. Soon after these events, possibly as early as 153 CE, a powerful revolt erupted in Egypt, during which the prefect of that province was killed amidst the unrest. Our two most important sources covering this period of history, namely John Malalas and Elias Aristides, unanimously assert that Emperor Antoninus himself traveled to Egypt to personally resolve the situation. A widespread misconception regarding Antoninus Pius is that he supposedly never left Italy throughout his entire reign. This erroneous belief originates from the works of Capitolinus, contained within the Historia Augusta. However, the Historia Augusta is, at best, a highly unreliable source, and at worst, overtly erroneous. Consequently, we must proceed from the assumption that the emperor personally took measures to quell this unrest. It was entirely logical for Antoninus to go to Egypt himself, as Roman emperors were extremely reluctant to permit the presence of any high-ranking Roman in this strategically vital province. Antoninus successfully suppressed the revolt that had erupted in Egypt, after which his path led to Antioch, located in Syria. On the eastern frontiers of the Roman Empire, tension was once again mounting, emanating from the Parthian Empire. The royal throne of Parthia had been taken as a war trophy during Emperor Trajan's campaigns, several decades before the events being described. The Parthians put forth a demand for the return of this symbol of power, but Antoninus categorically rejected their claims. In response, the Parthian king invaded Armenia. It should be noted that the Armenian king had passed away early in Antoninus's reign, and it was for this reason that the emperor had enthroned a new monarch of Armenia. When Antoninus demanded that the Parthians withdraw their troops from Armenian territory, they had no choice but to obey, as otherwise, they faced a full-scale war with Rome. the Parthian army was unable to withstand the might of the Roman legions. Many magnificent structures located in the eastern provinces date precisely from this period. Presumably, their construction was initiated during Antoninus's personal visit to these lands. In 157 CE, the emperor made his return to the Eternal City. Soon after his return, a rebellion erupted in Dacia. However, it was successfully quelled by Statius Priscus, the governor of that province. As a result of this unrest, Dacia underwent administrative transformations and was reorganized into 3 new districts. Historical information concerning the later years of Antoninus Pius's reign is quite sparse. His vigorous military and political activity throughout all parts of the empire granted him a period of appeasement in the concluding stages of his life. The emperor's advanced age removed any desire to actively intervene in matters extending beyond the usual routine of state duties within Rome itself. At the age of 74, Emperor Antoninus Pius departed this world, dying on March 7, 161 CE, at his villa located in Lorium. His reign was surpassed in length only by Augustus, which attested to the extraordinary stability and longevity of his time in power. If his mission was to serve as a transitional figure, intended to prepare Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus for the burden of imperial power, then he undoubtedly succeeded in this. However, his longevity likely exceeded all expectations of Emperor Hadrian, who perhaps anticipated a shorter reign. Nevertheless, by the time of his passing, his adopted sons were entirely ready to assume the colossal responsibility of governing the enormous empire.